Welcome back to the deep dive. So I want to start today with a little mental exercise.
Okay.
Picture a timeline of your life.
Yeah.
On the far left, you're born. On the far right, you're, well, to say very old.
Right.
Now, if I asked you to take a pin and stick it on that timeline at the exact moment where you are the most wise, where you have the best grasp on reality, where do you put that pin?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the instinct for almost everyone is to put it way down at the end.
Right.
Or at least, further along than where you are right now. We assume wisdom is a destination.
Exactly. We see it as this additive process. It's the gray beard, the library full of books, the decades of experience.
Mm-hmm.
The logic is simple. I've lived longer, so I've accumulated more facts, so I must be wiser.
Of course.
But the source material we're unpacking today suggests something that, honestly, it made me just stop and stare at the ceiling for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests we might have that entire timeline completely backwards.
It is a provocative thesis. It argues that the pin actually belongs at the very beginning.
Exactly. We're looking at a text today that argues children who, arguably know the least about tax brackets or geopolitics.
Or how to change a tire. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That they actually possess a unique form of wisdom that we, as adults, have actively lost. And to be clear, this isn't a kids say the darndest things kind of thing.
No, not at all.
We're not talking about them being cute.
Yeah.
We're talking about the very structure of reality.
Right. The source is making a philosophical distinction here. The core thesis isn't that children are geniuses because they have more data.
Obviously not.
They obviously don't. It's that children are wise because they are closer to reality. They are strictly accurate in a way adults have forgotten how to be.
Accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the word we need to circle today. Because the source defines wisdom in a way I had never seen before. It says, wisdom is not information. It is alignment.
And that definition changes everything. If wisdom is information, then yes, the 80-year-old professor is the wisest. But if wisdom is alignment...
Meaning how close your internal experience is to the external reality.
Exactly. Then the child is the master, and the adult is the struggling amateur.
So let's define the mission here. We're going to explore this difference between the unfiltered experience of a child and the layered perception of an adult. And I have to say, going through this, it's a little uncomfortable. It kind of forces you to look at your own maturity and wonder if it's actually just a collection of defense mechanisms.
It's absolutely meant to be uncomfortable. It asks us to question if we're actually growing up or if we're just covering up.
Okay, let's jump into part one then. Alignment versus information. The text gives this list of examples of what alignment looks like in a child. And on the surface, they seem incredibly basic.
They're biological. The text says they feel hunger, so they eat. They feel tired, so they rest.
They feel overwhelmed, so they cry. They feel joy, so they express it.
Yeah, simple cause and effect.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here immediately. Because as an adult, that just sounds like chaos. If I ate every time I felt a pang of hunger, or if I burst into tears every time I felt overwhelmed during a quarterly review, I would lose my job. I'd be a social pariah. Isn't that just a lack of impulse control?
That is exactly the adult objection. That's the first place our minds go. We look at that direct behavior and we call it simplicity.
Or lack of discipline.
Right. But the source corrects us. It says, in truth, it is accuracy.
Unpack that for me. How is crying in a meeting accuracy?
Well, think about the signal path. A child gets a signal overwhelm. The response is release crying. The connection is direct. There is zero distortion.
The inside matches the outside.
The inside matches the outside. Now, look at the adult in that same meeting. You feel the overwhelm. Your chest gets tight. But what happens in your brain?
I immediately check the room. I think I need to look professional. I think if I show weakness, I won't get the promotion. I think I'll just push this down and deal with it later with a glass of wine.
Exactly. You negotiate. You take the reality, that biological signal, and you run it through this massive filter of social norms, career strategy, ego protection. Timing. And by the time you actually act, maybe by giving a tight smile and saying, I'm on it, you aren't responding to the reality of your body anymore. You're responding to the story you have about your career.
So the child is aligned with the biological truth, and the adult is aligned with the social construct.
Precisely. And that gap, that distance between what you feel and what you show, that's what the text calls performance.
Performance. Wow. This section really hit home for me. The text notes that for a child, nothing is hidden behind performance. But for us, It feels like 90% of my day is performance.
It is exhausting, isn't it? We perform fine when we're devastated. We perform interested when we are bored out of our minds.
We perform confident when we are terrified.
And we get rewarded for it. That's the tricky part.
We do. We get paid to perform.
But the source is asking us to look at the cost. Performance creates a lag time. It creates disconnection. When you spend 40 years performing, you forget who's under the costume.
A child just hasn't learned to override their own signals yet. They're just
Receiving and transmitting. That's it.
So this brings us to the architecture of how we got here. Because we weren't born performing this way. We learned it. And the text has this great analogy. It says, children are not incomplete versions of adults. Adults are layered versions of children.
I love that framing. We usually think of a child as a draft, like a sketch that needs to be filled in with skills and manners.
Right, an upgrade.
This argues the child is the finished structural frame. Adulthood isn't an improvement. It's just piling drywall and insulation and heavy furniture on top until you can't even see the original frame anymore.
So let's talk about those layers. What is the drywall made of? The source explicitly mentions strategy, defense, and self-justification.
Those are the tools of survival in the adult world, right? Take strategy. As a kid, if you want the toy, you grab the toy. As an adult, if you want the promotion, you can't just grab it.
Yeah.
You have to position yourself. You have to manage perception. Maybe you have to be politically savvy. That is a layer of distortion.
And self-justification is the big one for me. That's the little lawyer we all hire to live in our heads.
Oh, absolutely. The internal PR team. I didn't yell at him because I have a temper. I raised my voice because he needed to understand the urgency of the situation.
Right. I'm not procrastinating. I'm just letting the ideas marinate.
Exactly. A child doesn't do that. If a child hits their sibling, they might lie to avoid trouble, but they don't usually spin some complex philosophical narrative about why this sibling deserved it to protect their own ego. They don't have that layer yet.
This leads to maybe the heaviest line in the entire text. It really stopped me in my tracks. It says, children are wise because they have not yet been trained to betray themselves.
Trained to betray themselves. It's a brutal phrase.
It is. It frames socialization not just as learning manners, but as a systematic training program in self-betrayal. Can you give an example of what that training looks like?
Think about a very common scenario. You're a parent. Your toddler meets a relative, maybe an uncle they don't know well.
Okay.
The toddler feels shy, maybe a little unsafe, or just uncertain. They hide behind your leg. They're honoring their feeling. But what does the parent usually say?
Don't be rude. Go give Uncle Bob a hug.
Right. We teach them that the social harmony of the room is more important than their internal reality. We teach them, ignore your gut, perform the affection. That's the first betrayal.
And by the time we're 30, we do it 50 times a day without blinking. We agree to projects we don't have capacity for. We smile at people we don't trust.
We suppress our intuition to keep the peace, and we call it professionalism.
But the source is arguing that every time we do that, we add another layer of distance between us and reality.
Yeah. And that suppression connects directly to how we process the world. The text moves into this idea of intuition and boundaries. It says children trust sensation more than story.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction. What's the difference between sensation and story here?
Sensation is the raw data. It's the tight chest, the stomach drop, the hair standing up on your arms. Story is the logic we apply afterwards to cue to explain the sensation away.
So sensation is, I feel unsafe with this person. And story is, but he has a nice suit and a good job and everyone else likes him, so I must be crazy.
Exactly. Adults are addicted to story. We're addicted to logic. If someone treats us poorly, but they give us a really eloquent apology explaining they were just stressed.
We tend to override our hurt. We let the words paint over the feeling.
But a kid doesn't care about the deadline.
Not at all.
The text says, children perceive emotional truth faster because they aren't distracted by the words. They notice the tension. They sense incongruence.
I've seen this happen in real life. You walk into a house where a couple's been fighting all morning. They stop fighting when you walk in. They put on smiles, offer you coffee.
The whole charade.
Right. And the adults in the room play along. Everything's fine. But the toddler in the corner, the toddler goes silent or starts acting out.
The toddler is the only one reading the room accurately. The adults are reading the script. The child is reading the energy. The source says children know when something feels wrong before they can explain why.
That's that intuitive safety.
Yes. And the flip side is true. They know when something feels safe without needing proof. As adults, we often demand proof. Why do I like this person? I need to see their resume. The child just knows.
Now, the text clarifies something important here, because I think it's easy to romanticize this as just being innocent or cute. But it says, they are not naive, they are unfiltered.
That's a vital correction. Naivety implies ignorance. You don't know the world is dangerous. Being unfiltered means you see the danger or the joy or the sadness, and you just haven't applied a strategy to hide your reaction to it.
So their responses are honest because they lack the toolkit for manipulation.
They haven't learned how to lie effectively to themselves yet.
Speaking of not lying to themselves, let's talk about the questions they ask. We've all been through the why phase with a kid.
Oh, yes.
Why is this guy blue? Why do we have to pay for things? It is utterly exhausting. But the source argues these are actually the most foundational philosophical questions in existence.
They are. They're asking about the mechanics of reality. Why do we do it this way?
And the source says adults stop asking them to preserve certainty.
That's the kicker, to preserve certainty. If you keep asking, why do we work 40 hours a week? Or why do we act this way in this relationship? Eventually, you might hit an answer that says, there is no good reason, we just made it up.
And that's terrifying. It's destabilizing.
Exactly. Adults need the world to feel stable and solved. So we stop asking why and we settle for, because that's how it is. We trade curiosity for stability.
Children don't care about the status quo. They want to understand how the machine actually works.
Which leads into their relationship with time. This part really resonated with me. It says children live in the present, but not because they're incapable of planning. It's because presence is where life actually happens.
It's the rejection of mental time travel.
Right. We spend our days either rehearsing failure, worrying about tomorrow, or archiving regret, obsessing over yesterday.
Archiving regret.
Yeah.
I felt personally attacked by that phrase.
We all do. Think about your brain as a computer. How much RAM, how much processing power is currently being used to file away past mistakes?
I shouldn't have said that in the meeting. Why did I wear that? I should have taken that other job 5 years ago. We build this massive archive of things we can't change.
And the text says, children, do not archive regret.
It's not that they don't feel bad, right?
Yeah.
If a kid drops their ice cream cone, they're devastated.
The world is ending. They scream.
But 10 minutes later,
They're chasing a butterfly. They're fine. They've moved on. They haven't filed the dropped ice cream incident into a folder marked, I am a clumsy failure who ruins everything.
they experienced the loss, felt it fully, and then released it.
This connects to the point about forgiveness, and I think this is where the source goes really deep. It says, children forgive faster because resentment requires narrative.
Resentment requires narrative.
Ooh.
Wow, I think that might be the most profound insight in the whole text.
I think so too. To hold a grudge, you have to do work.
Explain that. What is the work?
You have to keep telling yourself the story of the offense. You have to wake up every morning and remind yourself, he did this to me, that means he doesn't respect me. Remember last time he did that? This is a pattern.
You have to maintain the file. You have to keep the I am angry at this person software running in the background. It's active maintenance.
Huge amounts of energy. But the text says, children do not cling to identity. They don't have this rigid ego that needs to be avenged. If you take a toy from a kid, they cry. If you give it back and apologize,
The threat is gone. The reality has changed, so their emotion changes.
exactly. They don't hold on to the story of you are the toy taker for the next 6 months.
That is efficient.
It's incredibly efficient. Imagine how much energy we would all have if we didn't have to maintain the narrative of everyone who ever slighted us.
So we've established that children have this accuracy, this alignment, this efficiency. But the text pivots here. It's not just saying kids are great, let's all go back to kindergarten.
Right.
It's talking about the inner child in a way that feels less like pop psychology and more like structural engineering.
It frames the inner child not as a nostalgic memory, but as a cognitive operating system that is still running in the background of every adult.
It says this part of us remains active. It holds our intuition, our curiosity.
Our capacity for play. And it sets up this binary choice. When that operating system is ignored, adults become rigid. When it is honored, adults become humane.
Rigidity versus humanity, that's the battle.
Yeah. Think about the most rigid, difficult people you know. Maybe a boss, maybe a politician. They're usually the ones who have completely suppressed that intuitive, playful, honest part of themselves.
They're all armor, all layer, no core.
And the source lists the things that happen when we forget what children know. It says many of the world's problems come from forgetting simple truths. that rest matters, that honesty regulates, that connection heals.
And that play restores balance.
Honesty regulates. I want to highlight that phrase. Think about a corrupt system, a company hiding losses, or a family hiding a secret. The system becomes unstable. It wobbles. It requires huge energy to keep the lie going.
And then someone, usually the one acting like the child, the one who hasn't learned the strategy yet, says the truth. The emperor has no clothes.
And the system regulates. It snaps back to reality. It might be painful. It might cause a crisis, but it stabilizes the structure.
Children do that naturally. We have to work really hard to get back to that kind of honesty.
Right. Now, before we tell the listener to go into their boss's office and throw a tantrum because honesty regulates,
Yeah, please don't do that.
the text offers a very important caveat, a huge caveat. It clarifies. This does not mean children should lead societies or carry adult responsibility.
Thank goodness. I do not want a toddler flying my plane.
Exactly. We need executive function. We need the ability to delay gratification, to pay the mortgage. The text says it means adults should remember the intelligence they once trusted.
It distinguishes between two types of power here.
Mm-hmm.
It says wisdom is not dominance, it is responsiveness.
That is the synthesis of the entire argument. We often think of being grown up as dominating your environment, controlling the outcome, controlling people, forcing your will on the world.
But the source argues that true wisdom is responsiveness.
It's reading the reality. If you are hungry, eat. If the room is tense, acknowledge the tension. If you are sad, grieve. It's the ability to read the input and provide the accurate output.
Not a strategic or performed output.
Right, so the goal isn't to revert to childhood. The goal is to be an adult who hasn't lost access to that baseline truth, to integrate the two.
Don't replace the child, integrate the child.
Exactly. Keep the responsibility, keep the foresight, keep the discipline. But bring back the honesty. Bring back the ability to sense when something is wrong and trust that feeling.
And bring back the play.
Yeah.
Play restores balance. I think as adults, we view play as just a waste of time. If I'm not producing, I'm failing.
We view it as unproductive. But play is cognitive flexibility. If you can play, you can adapt. If you can't play, you become brittle. And when things change, which they always do, brittle things break. Flexible things survive.
It's a compelling argument. We usually look down at children, thinking we need to raise them up to our level. But this suggests we need to crouch down a bit to remember what the world actually looks like from the ground level.
Where the reality is, before we covered it in all that drywall.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. We've explored the architecture of layers, the wisdom of alignment, and the efficiency of letting go of the narrative.
And hopefully we've convinced you that you don't need to read another 10 books to find wisdom. You might just need to stop ignoring the data you're already getting.
I want to leave you with a challenge for the week. The next time you find yourself in a stressful moment, maybe a conflict at work, or just a moment of overwhelm, pause and do a quick audit. Ask yourself, are you reacting to the reality of the situation? The actual thing happening right now?
Or are you reacting to the story and the layers of defense you've built around it?
What would happen if you trusted the sensation before the strategy?
It might just save you a lot of energy.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.